All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Eric Jr. podcast. We are back. It is I, Chris Lynch, with my trusty co-host, Jake Klein. Jake, how are you doing? Big Sixers win. How are you feeling about the ball in the city?
On the 137th episode of the Eric
Wow.
Jr. podcast, I am here to tell you that I am so all in on these Sixers
Yep.
and that in 2 games, I have forgotten everything about our past. I don't hate the Celtics. I don't hate anybody anymore. I only hate the Hawks. I hate this team. They have been a very infuriating visual experience. I mean,
Yes.
there's so much news, and we have to bring so much juice. And shoot or shoot, and Shake Milton is the truth. Okay, I don't know what to tell you, Cream. It's
Are
one
you
and one. Last night was a must-win,
Yeah.
and thank God they won.
Yeah, well, speaking of last night, obviously Sixers heading into game two, down 0-1 after getting, let's punch in the mouth in game one, right? Like, I think that's fair to say. They came out a little flat and they paid for it. So going into game two, obviously such a vital game. I was pretty bullish on the Sixers' chances. I was feeling pretty confident. I told my coworkers that I expected a 15-point win. So that was my mindset going into the game. What about you? Were you a little more anxious? I know you, get a little nervous at the start of the game, get a little wet, cold feet. What were you thinking?
I was tightly wound all day on Tuesday, man. I was really nervous. But like I had confidence that they would win. But after what the first game did? It was such a drastically different experience than the Wizards, where there was
Yeah.
never really got a good scare put into me. And the scare from game one was residual because
Yeah.
there were strengths on the other team that I knew were going to be a continuous area of weakness for us, and that it was going to be difficult for us to stifle what the other team does well and their depth and their skill set, which is guys who can shoot.
Right.
So overall, I had confidence, but I was tense. And again, my coworkers were like more so asking Cream, "Hey, is everything okay? You seem a little tense." And I was like, everything will probably be okay tomorrow, or it won't. And
Or
that's
it'll
kind
be
of where I
worse.
left it.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. I think that's how a lot of fans felt. They felt like overall confident in the team that they would beat the Hawks, at home, game two, that they would win that game, but that the experience of it is what they were nervous about. Like they knew it wasn't going to be a fun experience. And I think, you know, more or less they were right. It was a little bit tighter at times than you ever wanted it, but thankfully the Sixers pulled it out. And, we have a couple people to thank for that. First and foremost, of course, is the guy who just continues to astound me, and that is Joel Embiid. The level at which he is playing is unbelievable, even in normal terms, but when you factor in the injury scare at the end of round one, I mean, it's unfathomable. I don't know how, like, if you had said last week that, oh yeah, Joel, he's going to be averaging 40 points in shooting 55% from the field. He's not going to miss a beat. He's going to be playing like 38 minutes a game, and it's going to be fine, and he's going to be great. You would have been like crazy. That would have been crazy talk. Like, we weren't allowed to dream that big, right? Like, and what he is doing is just unbelievable. Obviously, he had a little extra motivation yesterday, right? The NBA announcing that the MVP award is going to that other center, in Denver. Not worth talking about, but maybe that added a little motivation. I know Doc was like jumping on that about how he was excited to see what Joel would do, like, before the game. He was excited about the energy that he was going to bring. And, I mean, every time he shoots, it's just smooth. It's every move he makes is just so butter right now. And it's hard to like take yourself out of what you're doing and just like appreciate it for a second because obviously there's a lot of stress built into the playoffs. But he is really doing something so incredible. I'm not saying anything new, but like it is just he's incredible. He's so incredible.
His outright dominance for
Hmm.
the first two games, I don't think anybody, any analyst, anybody on the beat would have seen coming.
Right.
That cloud looming over this fandom of these Philadelphia 76ers will always be Joel Embiid's inconsistent health. And what I would say is what he's doing, he's always had these special skills that separate him from any center. He might not be the passer of he who shall not be named, but he does everything else, man. And the off the dribble James Harden little wiggle step back, he's hitting threes consistently, which is forcing that pump fake to be more lethal than it already was. It doesn't matter who you throw at him. He sees every double coming. He is evolving even with this setback with his health that I think we are all we have it in the back of our minds, and it's part of being a fan of this team. But his outright dominance and the way that he dominates, that is so unique and special. I can't believe he's playing this many minutes, and they literally cannot have him go off the floor because if the other team can exploit Dwight, then it's just untenable.
Yeah, and that's what's been happening. It's like the Sixers of old. Joel Embiid is absolutely dominating, and anytime he leaves the floor, it's like the disaster. It's really bad how, and it's shocking how bad the bench is playing. We'll get to them later. I guess we'll get to them now because there is one bench player that, when we needed him most, he showed up. Doc Rivers making the call in the third quarter to bring in the guy who has not made a shot in like 4 months. I've not seen him confidently take a three in I don't know how long. Shake Milton, everybody, coming back and just like reintroducing himself into our lives. Can you believe it? Like 4 or 5 from 3. Are you kidding me? Like this dude was a shell of himself in the Washington series. He got like a minute in game 1. It was unbelievable. He got played off the court, and I'm guilty of this more so than most. I'd say just like questioning Doc's rotation calls and like why is Shake Milton still playing? Why is Shake Milton still playing? Well, like he can do that. I guess that's why he's still playing, right? But just when you needed it most, when the Hawks were making a run, and Doc had to go to the bench because the starters were just playing so many minutes. Shake Milton comes in and just absolutely lights the world on fire. Like, what was your emotions watching that, Jake? Like, were you as like astounded? I couldn't even speak. I was astounded what was happening.
It was magical. And in the history books, listen, they asked, hey, did you remember watching the Shake Milton game? And I'm not talking about that damn 39-point meaningless loss. I'm talking about the 14-point June 8th, 2021 performance that brought the Sixers back from the brink after the game was at 1 point after they had given up an 18-point lead. Yes. This guy, this much maligned Shake Milton, out of the rotation, has been playing like an outright spaz recently. Not even knowing how to dribble in the paint, not knowing what to do when he gets to his spots. And for him to come in, you hit the nail right on the head. We complain a lot about Doc, his Procrustean nature, his unwillingness to adapt early on in playoff series, but he gets a tremendous amount of credit because when Shake Milton checked into the game last night, I let out an audible yelp. Not in a good way, because I could not fathom in the parallel universe theory one possible reality in which this was a good idea, and I guess we're living in the one, Cream, because it happened.
Right. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable what he did. Just complete paradigm shift of like what you expected to happen and versus the reality. I mean, I guess we'll talk about it now, but the bench this series has probably been the biggest disappointment.
Without question.
I know, Simmons free throws and Danny Green notwithstanding, the bench just getting torched in game 1, the all-bench unit getting torched, and then it happened again last night. The Hawks at halftime, their bench outscored ours 32-0.
Didn't score in the first half. No bench points in the first half.
Basically erasing all of the damage that the starters had done, which was racked up quite a lot. You know, they were to start the game, they were fucking moving, man. It felt good the way the starters were playing in the first half. It really felt like an extension of the second half of game one. And then just you send Embiid, you send Simmons, Green and Curry, you send them to the bench, and the bench unit just completely collapsed. Couldn't get anything going on the offensive end. We're giving up open shots left and right, and just completely unable to deal with the situation. And that's got to be the one thing you look for in game 3 and 4 and down in Atlanta is what combination of players can get this bench to even be just raise the floor a little bit, right? Like, we're not talking about, Shake Milton 14 points a game. Like, that's crazy right now. We just need the bench to be competent, and we'll win this series easily. We're just searching for that. Did you have any thoughts on specific players in the bench or what those kind of lineups were doing? I know they had the all-bench unit game 1. Doc switched it up a little bit. He kept Toby in. He was unable to keep the bench unit afloat. Do you think something happens game 3 or 4, or what do you think?
So in private conversations, I've certainly mentioned that I would prefer a change to the starting lineup. I don't think that's in the cards this series. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the play from the starters, just quickly, I think Seth has been tremendous, and he's going to continue to be really important, just crucial. If his shots, which are just absolute money, if they don't go in, it just changes everything, the entire tone of the game. Danny, let me just say this, Cream. Every time he pulled up off the dribble for one of those threes on a crucial possession, it was the equivalent. It took 7 minutes off my life. It was the equivalent to smoking a cigarette. That's what happens when you smoke a cigarette. 7 minutes off your life. That's what happens with Danny Green pull-up threes. And here's what I'll say, man. You know who's giving you nothing? Who is custom made for this shit? George Hill.
Yes. And George Hill.
We need you, buddy.
Where are you? Where are you? Where's your head at right now?
We really need you and both your thumbs, man. We need them both. And here's what else I'll say. We will fawn after Matisse. We love him, and I love Tyrese. But if Tyrese is not getting calls and Matisse is not getting blocks, there's only one man on that bench who can come in and provide the spark that you need in the playoffs, where you have to beat a man one-on-one, where you have to throw your body around and put the onus on the officials. And that is Shake Milton. Yeah. And if it can go past this game, I thought this was going to be more evident during the possible Brooklyn matchup, which we'll obviously have to get to them later. But in a series where you need bucket getters, man, the other team is going to just score. Even if you're a good defensive team, you're not going to stop. You need guys who get buckets. Ben Simmons is not quote-unquote get buckets. Tobias Harris, I guess this year a little bit in that Carmelo Anthony way can get buckets, but not reliably. The only guy who gets buckets is Joel Embiid. So Shake Milton's emergence as a bucket getter in this series where you have a high-potent, high-offensive team that's hitting threes, that's got depth with shooting, you're really going to need Shake Milton. But how about George Hill? And I don't think there's any place for Furkan Korkmaz in this particular series. He just doesn't have it, maybe sporadically, the way that Shake was getting run before this past game. But Shake Milton could be the X factor a little bit earlier than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, not anybody, this series for the bench, it's not gone the way anybody would have thought. Guys like George Hill and Dwight, to an extent, he played better in the second game than the first game. I'll give him that. But these guys that you thought you could rely on have just been, they've shown you what they are, and they're auxiliary players, right? They're not players who can just completely lift up a bench. They're not Jordan Clarkson or at a time Lou Will and Jamal Crawford. They're not those guys. So what Doc has to do, and we saw a little bit of it last night, I think we'll see more of it as the series progresses, is a little more staggering, a little more, not just one starter, maybe it's 2 stars on the floor, just a little bit more. And the problem with Doc that Doc now has is like, who do you bench? The bench as a unit was so effective during the year when it was effective because you were getting contributions from so many different players. Like one night it would be Furkan, the next night it'd be Matisse, then it was Maxey, and so on, Dwight, so on and so forth. Now, when you're staring at shortening the bench, who that guy you leave off is now a crucial argument because they all have arguments, right? Maxey doesn't shoot, and he's been sporadic all season. Furkan has not been himself, but he also has, the purest, transitional game to the starters. And obviously, Shake Milton has had his struggles all season, really. I mean, and we'd be crazy to think that just because he had this one game, he's suddenly going to snap back into last year's Shake Milton, right? Or I guess like December Shake Milton when he was a Sixth Man of the Year candidate for 4 weeks. Who those guys is now very difficult. Like how to rearrange those guys. I don't know. I don't know what the best like 9-man rotation is and what that looks like. You got 11 guys that he's played in both games. Mike Scott played 1 minute.
Yeah, was 9.5.
Yeah, he's played 11 guys in both games, and the bench is getting killed. This is a issue that has to be worked out, and there's no easy solution.
There's no clear solution because the glaring need that was never acquired and that Anthony Tolliver is seemingly not capable of doing is a stretch 5 that can really make the math work on a bench lineup or a staggered lineup. And if you're talking about Dwight and Matisse, like those guys cannot. Dwight, Matisse, and Ben, like that you can't do that. This is not the 90s, man. Yeah. That's not how the game is played. Like the way that team creates offense, I don't understand. So I totally agree. I do think it is still pretty situational. If you're in a game but everything is tough and Seth and Danny aren't hitting shots, then you need Shake in there, right? But if you need some type of spark, it's more lethargic and whoever, like then you go with Maxey, right? George Hill, I thought was going to be the regardless of the situation. He comes in either lineup. He can play with force. He could swap in for Danny Green and play with the starters. He can command the second unit. Like he should be the Swiss Army knife, and he's the guy I'm looking at here, man. Like Shake is going to be spotty. George Hill is supposed to be the reliable ball handler, and you saw a lot less turnovers in Game 2. That wasn't because of George Hill, but I'm saying those types of things keep you in games, and I trust George Hill to at least do that.
Right. I do too, and it's interesting that George Hill isn't used. He would be a guy I would think plug him into this with the starters more.
Yes.
Maybe keep Seth or Danny for a bench unit, Like I think you could run a trio of Joel, Ben, and George Hill with some, other pieces, Danny and then maybe, I don't know, Thibault or something. If you're looking to stagger more, he's a guy, along with Furkan, are 2 guys I think fit into the starting lineup around your 3 best players, right?
Definitely.
They fit in more seamlessly than a guy like Thibault or a guy like Maxey, right? Or Shake. We saw Shake last year, though, be very effective with, Joel and Toby when Ben Simmons went down. So it's a lot. Like that's what I'm so fascinated by. It's like what is going to happen? Is this going to come to head at one point or another? He can't keep playing 11 guys. There's not enough minutes. Nobody's getting he's playing that many people because no one has found a rhythm. No one has been able to do anything. So he's just throwing darts at a board. Like I'll shout out Furkan, see what he can do. Maxey will give you the keys for a little bit. And then obviously decimation. When he was desperate, he turned to who he believes is the best basketball player ever, Shake Milton, and was like, I know you've been struggling, But I know that Clippers game is in you somewhere. I know it. That's what he said to him, I'm sure. And it just brought out of him. And, that would be one thing I hope that it does give him a little bit more confidence because he was clearly just completely shook. At the end of the season, the Washington series was just more of the same. It would be nice if this was a corner-turning moment. I don't think it's fair to expect that, though.
Yeah.
Would you say?
I think that's fair to not expect it, but, he goes to Shake here because nobody had anything going on.
Right.
That is something that could continue. That could be another game where they're in it and it's stagnant. Maybe they're giving up a lead. And one of those guards, I think either Maxey or Shake can give you something. And you at least, they've demonstrated that they can give you something. Shake, it's that 3-ball and, the off the dribble stuff. And with Maxey, it's being able to attack the rim. Here's one key to the series, Cream, that will have a huge impact on the backup 5 minutes and maybe being able to go small. Two things. Sorry. One thing. You got to go with Clint Capella. He's the guy, if you can get into trouble, that really gives them problems because they don't have the size really to compete with us.
They do not. And we
can
haven't
punish them.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Atlanta's lineup much, but that is one absolute weakness. Other than Clint Capella, not really another center on the roster.
They've got that's getting back to the guards. Like that's something where Maxey can excel. And then when you maybe go small, then you go to Shake and say, now it's time for you to run this shit with the second unit where everything goes through you. That irrational confidence that separates those types of players that can come in and do that and are taking the shots without hesitating. That's going to be massive as well. The second thing, Cream, said it in the text, tried to reiterate this. You got to go with Trae Young. And the problem is they're putting Trae Young on Matisse Thybulle, who is never looking for offense, and they're getting away with it. They're getting away with hiding the worst defender in the NBA. I'll say it. The worst defender in the NBA.
Yeah.
So
You've
got to. That has got to be what they're studying the tape on, how to get the right switch on him, how to get him to commit to the switch or else give up the driving path for a collapsing kick or for a layup. They've got to attack that, and they've got to go at Clint Capella early and often to put them at a severe disadvantage regarding the size, which is one of our biggest strengths.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we saw it briefly in Game 2. We didn't see it at all in Game 1. I know one out-of-bounds play, they were able to get Toby onto Trae Young, and he was just right to the rim. It was no resistance whatsoever. If you can do that, you're not going to be able to do it every time, obviously, because the way Atlanta sets up their defense, they know that. They know that Trae is the ultimate liability on that end, and they do work hard to prevent those easy looks. But if you can get it, it's such an obvious advantage that it's worth going after a few times, especially when, Atlanta is getting hot, which they do. Like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen in Game 3. It's going to happen in every game. They're going to have a stretch where they're, it seems like they can't miss. And to, be able to stop those runs or, stop the bleeding a little bit, attacking a matchup like that is one way to do it. And I think that once Doc looks at the tape, we have a couple of days off until Game 3, not till Friday, and then the same for Game 4. They have 2 days off as well. So there's time to practice. There's time to look at tape and see what they can exploit, and that's what that's what I would expect Doc to be doing for these next couple of games.
For sure. I've got some other observations here about just the team in general. If you have anything as well. I mean, we got to talk about Ben Simmons, who's been playing a little bit better, and I think really he's the guy who benefits the most from a competent George Hill, minute allocation, because he can trust George Hill to make the right play and to use him in a way that will be most advantageous to the team. But I got to hit you with some stats here, Cream. Got to hit you with some stats. So if we're looking at Ben Simmons' free throws, 27. So in the playoffs, 2017-2018, in the 2017-2018 playoffs against the Heat and the Celtics, my man shot 71% at the free throw line on 5.8 attempts per. Wow. That goes down to 58% on 3.3 attempts in the 2019-2020 playoffs against Brooklyn, and then obviously the Dinosaurs up there in Canada. This year, Kareem, 33%, but still on 5.7 attempts per game, meaning that, he's still relatively in attack mode. I just need you to respond to that.
I mean, it's shocking.
The digression there.
It's shocking how poorly he's been shooting free throws. He went 0 for 2 yesterday. I have no words. Like, I don't understand it. It doesn't, like, for the last couple years, it's been pretty obvious the signs that Ben Simmons was in a funk. Like, he would stop attacking. He would stop doing all these things, and you could tell, oh, he's not confident right now. He's doing everything else. He's doing everything else fairly well, I would say. We can get into the discourse, quote unquote, about his 4-point performance yesterday. But overall, this playoffs, he's been playing pretty to very well. The one thing is just this free throw thing, and I don't quite understand it because he seems to be very confident in every other facet of his game. And it's usually like all or nothing with him. I'm not used to this, and I don't know what it means. I don't know if I should feel confident that he's going to turn it around, or if this is just a mental block and I should feel worse. It's really quite puzzling, and it's starting to get concerning, of course.
Yeah, you did a nice job there covering kind of the scope and spectrum of this discussion on Ben Simmons. It's just, my question is, like, those numbers, like 71% down to 33%, if you can get it even to 50%, but getting down to the root of what's causing that, again, like many aspects of being a fan of this team, will never truly get an answer to. Mm-hmm. So I guess we do just have to accept that. But like I said, I'm going to stick to the line I had a couple pods ago. If we win in the playoffs, Ben Simmons had a good game.
Right.
And I don't care about how many points. Ideally, he goes, let's say 50%. Let's start small with our goals. Let's get back up to 50% from the line. Sure. And that's all I'm going to ask. I'm not going to ask for much. I'm going to ask you to do what you do. I thought he played really well on Trae Young, one of the adjustments Doc had, having been right on Trae to start, which I liked.
Yep.
So I thought it was a good Doc game, and there is definitely a blueprint here to exploit and in terms of the size advantage, and Joel just giving you everything you could have hoped for and then some. One question for you, Kareem, just on this matter, because it's so concerning and annoying to me. Would you have given up a very lightly protected first for PJ Tucker? Because that piece on this team at this moment could literally be the difference, and I don't think that's a hyperbole.
I just think I say yes. I've always liked PJ Tucker. I think he would have fit great here.
At that price?
Yeah, at that price. What did Milwaukee get him for? Like 3 seconds?
Dude,
like that?
Not even. They moved back or something, like from their first round pick into the second or something. It was a ridiculous deal. I guess we weren't in on it at all because you would think that we'd be willing to offer more.
Right. I'm just like, the funny thing is just like, well, then we have 12 rotation players instead of 11. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, he's played George Hill like 30 minutes this series. He's averaging about 14 minutes. That's kind of crazy to me that he's playing that little. I would have thought he would have been much higher. Minute-wise. Obviously, like, some of that's Maxey, progressing a little more quickly. Let me ask you this, just a thought in my head. I've thought about this before, though, but you're not prepared for this question. Knowing where Maxey is now, would it have been more, effective not going after George Hill at the deadline, but maybe a wing or a forward to better allocate our bench presence, because it's very guard heavy now. Knowing that you can trust Maxey in the playoffs, quote unquote trust, you've trusted him so far. Is George Hill still like where you would have? Because you moved Tony Bradley, who we saw, be very effective for the Sixers, and you gave up, that was your one move to make. and it was George Hill. Do you have any regrets about that?
This is a quality conversation here, Cream. This is really the reason we keep you around here in the studio is for stuff like this. Absolutely. Like, even I have been one of the biggest, after initially not really liking or getting jazzed about the George Hill acquisition, like his steadying presence, it was such a big selling point to me, and just like half court initiation and all that. But he hasn't been seeking out that type of responsibility while on the floor. He's been a ball mover who is kind of just indifferent to taking on some of that responsibility, without being prompted to do so, without the shot being wide open for him to take. So I absolutely would support that line of thinking of you have Maxey and Shake and you roll with them. They're enough. They're not total defensive slouches, and they're both willing to shoot it. Shake obviously more than Tyrese, but absolutely that would affect my line of thinking. I mean, they get Anthony Tolliver, man. Like, you see a team like Brooklyn pick up Mike James. He's out there killing it for them, and we just can't find that guy at the position of stretch big.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yep. Obviously stretch big would have been pretty dope to get.
It's the most popular trend right now, it seems like, the stretch big, man. Well, it's all the rage in the fashion world.
It is all the rage. For good reason. Man. It's been shown to be very effective. Just the contrast, just to go back to Ben Simmons for a second, the contrast of shooting 90% from the field and 25% from the free throw spot is just, in this series, those are unbelievable. It's unbelievable. What did you think about the discourse last night after the your big thing is obviously win, and Ben Simmons had a good game. That's your takeaway, and you'll hear nothing other than that, right?
I don't know why anyone would waste their time trying to engage in that. Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's my stance. Yeah. Yes.
I agree. It's funny, like, he had 4 points last night, obviously. And then just like, we won by 16. Like, the starters were amazing. Like, it's one thing if he was like 2 for 3, right? Something like that. It'd be one thing if he was like, 1 for 11 and he had 4 points. Right. That would be worse, right? Like, that's worse. We can acknowledge that would be bad. Unless if he was just jacking up shots.
Unless 6 of those are missed threes, then that's pretty fucking bad.
And it's funny watching Giannis just brick these threes in the Brooklyn series. Just like,
that's
and it was like, alley. Is that better? Probably not. I don't know.
That was your take. That was your stance. You talked about that. You're like, dude, it's not like, that is not what you would want in these big moments. There, Giannis is literally doing the thing that you talked about.
He has to. He's forced himself to.
Yep. And made himself believe that that's the way.
That's the way. And it's wrong. He should. And obviously, he's not to blame solely for the way that series is going. Chris Middleton being like 20% from the field is obviously not good. It's like not what you want.
He's making Tobias look fucking amazing. I love
it. He is making Tobias look good by comparison. That's funny. Although Tobias, 1 for 5 from 3 in the series, not a game, in the series, he's 1 for 5. We got so many nitpicks that we can do. We can do this all day.
Seriously.
One more player, Danny Green. Do you expect him? I expect him to turn it around. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm an optimist. I expect him to turn it around. I want to keep him in the starting lineup.
If he will just get his ass in the corner and shoot from there, then we'd have no problems. But Danny just fucking has that irrational, pulling up in transition, haven't gotten set, really need a bucket. This is my time. No, Danny, it's not your time. That is not the time to take that shot. No. And Seth's gravity has been so important.
Seth Curry's been amazing. We haven't talked about it enough.
It's been stupendous.
Phenomenal right now. He's shooting the ball like crazy.
Sorry. And we need every
point. We've needed every point. Yeah.
every three that goes down for him has such an impact on this team because no one else do they even sniff at. Even when Joel hits him, they go, we'll live with that.
Right.
We're not going to let him beat us inside. Like, nobody has that pull other than, Furkan, I guess, who has such deficiencies. But Seth, man, I guess he's not. That's the trade-off, though, Cream. I talk about wanting to pick on Trae Young, go at him, but you got Seth Curry there. It's not, he can get his shots, but,
right.
Seth Curry's been amazing. I don't think you can remove him from the starting lineup because his skill set, what it does for Ben and Joel, is simply too important.
Well, he's been the second best offensive player. He's been
without a doubt
amazing.
I see playing a nice complementary role in a bench mob with a George Hill, and I guess George Hill and Danny would both be willing to shoot. Can you sneak Matisse and Dwight into that type of lineup? That's to be seen, I guess. But I could totally see Danny still doing a very good job on that bench unit. But I don't think Doc is going to do that, man. Not until the Brooklyn series, unless we go down like 0-2 in that or something.
The logic that Doc, I think, is using, and I'm projecting here, I don't know that for sure, is that the starting lineups have been phenomenal. The starting lineup has been all year, the playoffs, every game in, game out, starting lineup gets buckets, they get stops. And I get his reluctance to break that up. I do. I get it. It's why he doesn't break up Ben and Joe, because he sees how much more effective they are with each other when they are sharing the load, right? He sees that, and I get it. But to manage the playoffs, there has to be a little bit of give. You have to be willing to take the starting lineup down 2 notches in order to bring the bench up 4, right? If that analogy tracks, there has to be a little give and take here so we can be a little bit more consistent. And then in the fourth quarter, I'm all with you, Doc. I'm 110%. The starting lineup is crushing it in the fourth quarter. They've been amazing. I think it's the biggest advantage that they have over the Hawks, just team-wise. I trust them in the fourth quarter so much more than I would trust the Hawks. And then in the 2 games, it's been shown out like that. Just big advantages in the fourth quarter. But when you're in the middle of the game, when you're in the second quarter, sacrifice a little bit to gain an advantage on the back end, I think.
Yeah, like we mentioned, he did make some pretty important decisions. I'm sure he wanted to maybe keep that card up his sleeve with Ben, defending Trae, but he realized there's no time to waste.
Yes.
Can't worry about picking up the early fouls. Yes. The time is now. So we have seen him do that on the margins a little bit. Obviously, the decision to bring in Shake was notable. So the question is, will that touch the starting lineup? It does not appear that way, but by no means does that mean we will not continue to see notable adjustments outside of the starting lineup.
100%. I think this is I think the Washington was a field-out series, and this, to an extent, is also a field-out series because that's just the kind of guy Doc is. I think he's done this too long to, come in and, this is what we'll do. And he's stubborn to making game adjustments, but we've seen him, when he's needed to, he has. He brought in Shake, even though he didn't play in the first half. He's tweaked some things here and there. He brought in Tobias to support the bench unit yesterday. Yeah. We'll see if he's going to go, maybe just a couple steps further and really cement the bench unit with some reinforcements, because that would be, I think, make all the difference.
And just one thing, Cream, if you were arguing for what Doc has been doing, we laugh at 11 guys playing, but the idea of one of them being ready in these moments, not being completely out of their element. Shake Milton did it last night, but who's not to say it's one of the other guards later this series, because they have gotten the run and they have gotten some of the timing down in real game time with a guy like Dwight, with a guy like Matisse. So I would say that one possible thing to look out for is, because these guys have been able to play in playoff minutes, most of them not just garbage time, keeping them in, ready and just psychologically ready could maybe be borne out for us as a huge positive moving forward if we get a couple other performances that mirror what we saw from Shake last night.
Yes, I agree. It's going to be a long series just it's not going to go like smooth. The
Oh, it
Hawks are too
took a
good at
lot out of me
offense.
last night. Took a lot out of me watching Danilo Gallinari
yes,
and Embiid go at it, and Kevin
yes.
Huerter hitting shots, and Bogdan hitting every shot. It took a lot out of me, Cream.
No, I feel you, man. They're so dynamic on offense. They have so many weapons that you're not going to be able to like. There's not going to be Washington routes. Like we're not going to be able to do that with this team. They're better than Washington.
They were up 18, and then by halftime, it's like we got a full-blown game.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no rest to be had, no rest to be gained here. It's a playoff series. Like this is what it takes to win, in the playoffs. And it's I think can be seen as a good thing. They're getting a test before the conference finals. I know I'm still very confident on the Sixers' chances of advancing in this series. I'm very confident. I imagine you are as well.
I am confident. I am not confident in myself to remain composed during these Atlanta runs throughout these games. But I think they got a really crucial win last night, and it was much closer than the score indicated. And I think that first game shook these guys up a little bit, and hopefully in a good way. I think they could go down there and be ready for them in Atlanta. Even splitting, I think, is totally fine. Come here, take care of business, and then I have the utmost confidence that they would take care of business in Game 6 or 7. So let's just finish this, Cream. Let's take them in 5.
That would be ideal. That's what I said before the series. So I said after Game 1, Game 6 and 5 still in play.
All right.
They're not as good as us, right? Like they're not as good. Can we acknowledge that? Can we? They're not as talented. They don't have as much talent. Their team isn't. They're not experienced. They're very raw.
They've got some fun toys, but we clearly have the way better playground setup. I mean, it's not even close.
Not even close. They hit every shot though, and it's annoying.
Yeah, they do.
It's quite annoying how they keep hitting these ridiculous shots. Eventually that'll stop, and we'll be there at the end. All right, cool. Do you want to – that was good. That was a good – I think we covered all our bases here.
Feels good to get that out of my system, man.
Yes.
After not podding for a little bit. There's a lot of bent-up anxiety there.
Yes. Should we move over to the other Eastern Conference semifinal?
I think it's only right that we get in on this Bucks slander while we can.
While it's hot. Get it while it's hot. Man, they look down bad, man. They look down bad. Somebody save the Bucks, possibly from themselves. Brooklyn's putting a beat down on these guys, man. I know Game 1 was a little close, but they didn't look competitive in Game 2, and I'm like, I hope just for the sake of good television that they put up more of a fight, because they can't just get washed. They gotta put up some resistance.
Cream, the way this thing has been built, this matchup,
yes,
for it to have these two games after not getting the Los Angeles Clippers, Los Angeles Lakers matchup, that it is the only thing I've wanted the past 2 years. To not get that and then have this series be these two blowout games, I would like to file a formal complaint with Adam Silver's office and say, you lied to me. Yes. I was promised these fun, entertaining, thrilling games, and I have yet to see one. I think Game 3 is going to be big. It's got to be a kitchen sink game for them, but I see Milwaukee winning Game 3, Brooklyn taking Game 4, and Brooklyn taking a Game 5, and just a lot of questions facing the Bucks in the offseason. Drew Holiday has not been Superman, which is basically what they got him to be.
We're hoping,
And Chris Middleton has just been Tobias Harris's doppelganger from the bubble, man. That dude is trash.
Damn. He's really, it's tough. It's no, crazy analysis to say that Brooklyn, more so than any other team, can withstand the loss of a James Harden, but they have been playing without James Harden for the entire series, and they have not skipped a beat on offense. Their role players are playing out of their minds. Blake Griffin has dialed back the clock to 2012. Just playing phenomenal defense against Giannis and then bringing it all on offense. They look unbeatable. They look like the last unbeatable team left in the playoffs. I don't know what your take of it, and I do want to give the Bucks the benefit of the doubt of letting them go home and see what they can come up with after a couple of days rest. I want to give them that chance. I think they've earned it. The way they dispatched the Miami Heat with such, ruthlessness. But man, Brooklyn looks tough to beat.
I think anybody trying to zig while we're zagging here, there is no contrarian take about these Brooklyn Nets. Not with Kevin Durant playing like this and them performing at this level without James Harden, as you mentioned. So there's literally, I don't think there's an objective way to go about it. And dude, I'll tell you what, Cream, it clearly looks like it's going to be Brooklyn, but the thing that stood out the most from the Brooklyn-Milwaukee matchup was the frenetic pace.
Yes.
I mean, dudes, these guys were getting up and down the floor. And all I could think about was Joel Embiid having to potentially keep up with something like that. I mean, we got to get there first, but that pace and the amount of transition opportunities that were happening, and you think about our transition defense, it put a little fright in me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's an easy comparison to make, but it does remind you of those Golden State teams. The way they would just blitz teams and it'd just be so fast. No fouls. There's no foul calls because you're not near them to get a foul. They're so
they don't
open.
Attack.
They just the game is just looks so easy. Kyrie Irving hasn't shot a free throw in 2 games. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. He's wide open every time. It's an easy bucket. It's just, yeah, it's a little overwhelming watching that. And I'll be the first to say I do not expect Monk James to keep playing this well. I do not expect Blake Griffin to continue to do what he's been doing on the defensive end. I don't think it can happen. But they have shown that they have all the pieces together, right? They have the rotation, they have the tight 8-man rotation. They know exactly what each guy's role is. There's no figuring it out. Everybody just kind of floats around the orbit of Kevin Durant, and he just makes everything super easy. When they're getting contributions from up and down the lineup, they're unbeatable. And that's just kind of what it is. There's no, if we do this, counter that.
I don't think there's a counter for that guy, Kevin Durant. I don't know. You let me know if you find one.
That guy's pretty good.
Let's take care of business, and then we can get all into that. Yes. We can get into that dirty talk.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We should enjoy the pace that we're at right now, right? We should enjoy what we're doing. How well Joel Embiid is playing without having to look ahead. But it does look foreboding for any team left in the playoffs. What's happening in Brooklyn last week? Want to touch on a little bit what's happening out west. It is aptly the Wild West out there. The Lakers are gone. There's mayhem in the streets. I don't know what's going to happen. For the first time, I don't know. Who's going to win the West? I have no idea.
That's the question, man. And boy, I hope it's the Clippers, because anybody else would be really boring. Phoenix, sure, Chris Paul getting a ring.
Yeah,
I don't think they could hang. They couldn't hang with Brooklyn. And Utah, I kind of just want to see how poorly they abuse Rudy Gobert, just to see that with my own eyes in the finals. In the finals, no less. That'd be great. But I do want to just see Kawhi and Paul George, a guy who I just loved every aspect about his game, and ever since making that declaration have just been reminded over and over again that he is not the one.
Right.
And I just want the Clippers and Denver. Let's just congratulations to your big guy.
You did your thing. Just
get out. Okay, you're not welcome really anymore. You stayed past your welcome. You're the last person at the party. the person whose house it is wants to go to sleep. They didn't really plan on having guests. It's time for you to go.
Agreed. Definitely want to see Utah lose. Definitely want to see Denver lose. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of looking forward to some exciting series, but I'm not really juiced up about any of this. I guess I am kind of rooting for the Clippers, but not really. Not really.
Are you to tell me, after all this time of all this depth and better play in the West, that the East playoff bracket is now more entertaining with more star power and talent?
Yeah,
Is that what I'm to believe?
Well, I mean, it's really just one team, right? Like, it's just the Brooklyn Nets. Like, they have it's them and then everybody else combined, right? It's just like on a second tier. There is no East versus West anymore. It's Brooklyn versus everybody.
There you go. That's it.
Like, that's the mentality of the fans at this point, at least. Like, well, Brooklyn's going to make it, and we'll see who they're going to beat. It's certainly not gone the way a lot of people expected. I think a lot of people expected this to be a super competitive playoffs. And we can still get some really competitive games. I know our series is turning out to be a little more competitive than people thought. Utah took game one against the Clippers, but I think most people fancy the Clippers in that series, so that'll be exciting. But yeah, it's just not, without LeBron, it's just not as fun. I know, like, maybe I sound like, LeBron stan, but like, I'm just used to when he's there, I know there's stakes. Like, I know there's stakes
Yes.
involved.
Yes.
You can't tell me that this Phoenix Denver series has any stakes. I'm like,
it's got no
they're
juice.
they're just playing basketball. They're just playing around in the driveway for all I care. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's not fair to them, but it's how I feel.
That is a phenomenal take right there. There are no stakes in the West.
There's no stakes.
You got teams who have never won a championship.
No, none of them have. Yeah.
Nobody cares, man. Nobody cares. You guys were supposed to be so cool and fun. LeBron's the only reason why anybody was paying attention, and we all want to just continue to have the conversation about him and the debate about the greatest. We don't care. Nobody cares. So totally right on that. That is the group's stance on the West of the Eric Jr. Podcast Syndicate right here, of the entire company, from the CEO down to the people on the ground. That is our stance on the Western playoffs.
Severe lack of juice. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if maybe we'll get a couple, like, buzzer beaters, maybe a Game 7 to get us interested. I thought the Clippers-Mavs series was great. I mean, I loved watching those teams play. They could play another couple series, and I would be interested.
It'd be better
more so than what it'd be better than Denver Phoenix.
Best out of 10, man.
Yeah, why put a limit on it? Just keep going until somebody quits. Somebody's like, I'm done. I've had enough. Yeah, so that's the deal. That's where we're at with the playoffs. It's been a weird couple weeks. It's I don't know what to say. Do you have anything else before we round out our coverage this week?
I don't think so. It might be a little while before you hear from us again. So
who knows? So make sure you tune in. Make sure you stay to the last minute, because who knows when we're gonna pop up on your feed again. That is the situation when we're down to two people, and those two people are very busy.
Very busy people.
It's just the reality of the situation. But I think this has been good. I'm glad we were able to hop on and give you some Sixers takes and talk about the bench unit, which is really the only thing that matters in the world.
At this very moment.
At this very moment, I'm just like, the Sixers bench, though. Every conversation I'm kind of angling toward, what about the Sixers bench? Like, that's kind of where my head's at. All right. I don't think we have any Eagles, any Phillies, any Flyers. The Union are very good. If anybody,
Oh, stop!
they
You're trying
are.
to sneak that in there
They're
after
very
not
good.
touching on any
They've
of those
been
other teams.
they've been very good.
Oh my
They're
God!
playing and they're good. So it's more than I can say for any of the other teams. So I want you to back off a little bit.
All right, fair enough.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Eric Jr. Podcast. We will be back at some point. So tune in. Keep your eyes on the feed. Thank you, Jake, for joining me. That's all. Bye.